I want to welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Her Excellency Ambassador Arikana Chihombori Quao.
A very good evening to all of you. I often say as I get older, any opportunity I get to spend with young people, I grab it because I feel 10 years younger instantly. It is indeed a great honor to be addressing you all today. I want to take the opportunity to thank the Student Association and of course the president and leadership of this great institution for creating such an amazing environment for our future, which is you, the young people. It is you that we do what we do every day, especially when it comes to those students from Africa, especially when it comes to us as a people of color around the world. It's about time the world begins to realize it's time to re-strategize. It's time to appreciate and accept that as inhabitants of Earth, we're all equal. There's no room for discrimination, no room for racism, bigotry, and hate. Earth is more beautiful when we treat each other with love. My name is Arikana Chihombori Quao, born in a little village called Chivu in Zimbabwe. Yes, I came to this country to go to college. Had a first degree in general chemistry, a master's in organic chemistry, medical school, did 3 years general surgery, and I followed another 3 years in family medicine, practiced medicine for 25 years, until one day, I'm fast asleep at 3 a.m. when my phone rings. There was a voice on the other side suggesting that the African Union ambassador to the United States had just turned in her resignation, and they wanted me to be the next African Union ambassador to the United States. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Did you just hear my history? Did you hear my profile? I'm a scientist all the way. Now, who in their right mind would expect me to go to Washington? And not only go to Washington, but I was supposed to be the top dog African ambassador. I'm over all the other African ambassadors. I'm like, me? What do I know? So initially I thought I was dreaming. Because the following day I had to double check to say, did that call really come? I really thought I was being set up for defeat. I resisted it for about 6 months. And then I thought, you know what, since leaving Zimbabwe, I never really taken a sabbatical. I said, I'll tell you what, if they think they're playing a joke on me, the joke is on them. I'm gonna go to Washington, I'm gonna have fun, I'm gonna be wined and dined. And after 6 months, I'm gonna go back to my elders and say, you know what, elders, thank you so much, but I couldn't do it. I'm going back home. So I actually thought that's the way it was gonna be. Little did I know that being a medical doctor, we're actually practicing diplomacy every day in the exam room. You see, the woman that comes to you with a headache, she doesn't tell you that the headache is because of the husband at home. She doesn't tell you that the husband is beating the crap out of her. She doesn't tell you that the problems are at work, the children, because she's not supposed to air her dirty linen. So you would think as patients come to see us as clinicians, that they'll be honest with us, but quite often they don't. So the onus is up to you as a doctor to say, before I evaluate that chest pain, that headache, that belly pain, is there something organic? Or is there something else, exogenous, that's causing this symptom? So how then do you speak to your patient and find yourself in their home without physically being home? So yes, it's body language. So it's how you phrase yourself. It's a lot of joking. Just find a way of understanding this being beyond what you can see. So after 20 years, I think I perfected that. I knew how to do tricks around my patients to get what I wanted. But I never made the correlation between my experience as a family physician to what I would then experience as a diplomat in Washington, D.C. So after I've decided I was going to go on and hang around and these people who are going to, make fun of me, well, they're going to be the last, I'm going to have the last laugh. So I would be sitting in these seemingly important meetings, and instead of paying attention to the conversations, you see, once a medical doctor, always a medical doctor. I found myself making all kinds of diagnoses in my colleagues, like, you got a thyroid condition, I need to see you, and you are bipolar, oh, say I have a pill for you. Because I thought initially it was quite humorous that I was in Washington, D.C., but every now and then, somebody would say something that made me stop and say, wait just a minute, did I just hear that? And I'm talking about what would be said to either African ambassadors, African ministers, African leadership coming to Washington. It shouldn't be said from one diplomat to the other. But what's even more disturbing was that the Africans took it. They didn't speak up. So that's when I thought, no, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this picture. Initially, I didn't say anything because I was the new kid on the block. And I really wanted to just learn from others and absorb it all. But repeatedly, even when I would go to Africa, they would still be abused, even on the African soil. Then I decided, by month 5, I'd been staying in a hotel the entire time. I decided I was going to hang around just a little bit longer. So I called home, and I said, well, I've met a few, you know what, that need a little kicking. And I only kick those that must be kicked. And that I was going to hang around a little bit longer until they ran me out of Dodge. And that I did. The abuse, the blatant disrespect of the African has got to stop. And only the Africans can stop it. The question then becomes, why is it that we as a people are unable to push back and fight back against the blatant abuses of Africa? This is Africa Innovation. If you are going to be a future African leader, we expect an African who understands that you are just as good as anybody else, that you are just as smart as anybody else, and that you have every right to stand your ground, stand your turf, and defend and fight for what belongs to you. That you cannot, must not, and should not allow anyone to abuse you because of the color of your skin. If I may give you examples of the egregious abuses that are going on today in Africa. When the West started coming to Africa, they met an amazing continent, some of the most powerful kingdoms. And they wondered, how on earth are we going to conquer such an amazing continent? So they came in with their guns, and our ancestors fought with bows and arrows and sticks. And of course, they won. And then after they did that, they wondered why you could be so smart that you want to fight the British, you want to fight the Germans, you want to fight the Portuguese, you want to fight the Italians. How dare you? So the leaders were beheaded. And their remains, listed as trophies of conquest, were taken to Europe. If you were colonized by the British, their remains remain in Europe today. If you were colonized by the Germans, the Italians, the Portuguese, the Belgians, I am talking centuries, those remains are still sitting in jars across Europe. Really? 2023? Wow. Because they're trophies of conquest. You see, I went to Africa, killed a lion, I got my head, there it is. I went to Africa, I was fighting with guns, they had sticks. Yes, I won. I have my head over here. But what is even more disturbing is, why is it that the Africans haven't done something about it? How long do you think a finger of a German soldier last in Namibia? How long will a thumb of a British soldier last in Kenya? How long will a finger of a Portuguese soldier last in Angola? Not even a minute. They will storm into those countries, kill thousands of people, just to recover that one finger. The question then becomes, what is it that is ailing the black person that we are unable to stand up and fight back? Think of the artifacts, priceless artifacts, stolen from African civilizations. They are littering European basements, and many are in the museums. And we all go to Europe and we pay to see what belongs to us. Did you all see that Nigerian guy who went into one of the museums, I forgot which country, I think it was Belgium, and he held one of those bronze statues which was at the entrance, and he said, "This is mine, I'm taking it." He created a scene, but he was right. Because we want to see the bill of sale. What did you pay for these artifacts? Again, we Africans know what's going on. This is evidence of a serious crime that was committed, from stealing to murder. And yet we're doing absolutely nothing about it. Let's go to the genesis of why our minds are the way they are. If you young people are going to grow up to be true future leaders of Africa that are going to stand up and say, what is right, what is wrong, you must understand yourself. You must understand how the black person got to be of the mindset that we are in. We must understand that we have been through systematic brainwashing. We've been made to believe that everything African, everything black is bad and undesirable, and that everything European is better. It started with the Roman Catholic Church. They sent missionaries. Go and subdue the Africans, because they knew we were fighters. Let them believe that if I slap you on the right, you should give me the left cheek to finish off. Let them believe that our riches are in heaven, so while we were holding our hands with our eyes closed, they were robbing us in their life. So by the time the real colonizers came in to finish off, the African was thoroughly brainwashed and defeated. Defeated where it matters the most, which is the mind. They gave us a white Jesus Christ, who we know very well based on the Bible. He had crimson skin and hair like wool. They said, forget what the Bible says. This is the image of Jesus Christ. And we said, okay. We know for a fact that Jesus Christ was a black man. Why? When King Herod was trying to hunt him down, Mary and Joseph were told to run away and hide in Egypt. If Jesus was a white man, they would have sent them to Europe. But they knew very well that in Europe he will stand out like a sore too. So I would like to say, if the truth be told, a black man born in the Middle East, grew up in Africa, Jesus Christ was the first African diaspora. Yes! I'm saying this to say, if we as your elders are going to raise the future leaders of Africa, you must understand that you're suffering from the legacy of slavery and the legacy of colonization. And until you heal yourself from that legacy, nothing and I mean nothing you do, is going to change our circumstances as a people. Garbage in, garbage out. When you go to that boardroom table with a colonized mind, the results are colonized. I would argue with my family. A lot of them don't think they're colonized, but one by one they would come back to me and say, you know what, Auntie, you were right. I was sharing with a young man, my niece. No, Auntie, no, I'm not colonized. I don't have that problem. Until one day, she called me very upset at herself. She's a nurse, and they were getting ready to have a meeting at the hospital. As she walked into the room, there was one seat left in the front row. So she took it. But just as she sat down, another nurse on the same floor comes along, and this nurse just happens to be white. So she found herself getting up to give up the front row seat. But as she was walking away, she thought about her aunt. And she said, oh my God, my aunt would kill me if she knew I'd done this. So she ran back and got the seat before the young lady could take it. And she called me after the meeting and she said, Auntie, you were right. Colonized. The things that we do as black people every day, things that are just downright stupid. We got to constantly and relentlessly check ourselves. Why am I doing this? Does this make sense? Why am I not pushing back? Why can't I speak up? What am I afraid of? As black people, we have been filled with fear. Fear of those who don't look like us. For how long are we going to remain in fear? For how long is our fear going to keep us from reconnecting with what is consequentially ours? The richest continent on earth has some of the poorest inhabitants. We know the games that they're playing. We know that once upon a time there was an African tree of life that was thriving. And now we have an African tree of life that is ailing. Why is it? What happened? What can we do to revive the African tree of life? We go back to the Genesis. You see, they like us to continue to focus on the issues above the root. So we never have to talk about the issues below the ground. For it is the issues below the ground that you young people must understand if you're going to be in a position to be the future leader of Africa. Understand the root causes of why Africa is where it is today. So yes, when they came to Africa, they set out systems. But the biggest crime that has ever been committed on Africa is the Berlin Conference. That is when they met for 4 months in Berlin from 1883 to 1884 to 1885. Strategized on how to not only destroy the continent, but also its people. Broke up the continent into tiny little economies that can never survive on their own. The Berlin Conference remains alive and well today. I cannot tell you how many intelligent young brains like yours have come to me after such a meeting and said, but Ambassador, why do we keep talking about the Berlin Conference? It's a thing of the past. I'm like, son, as long as we have a country called Togo, as long as we have a country called Eswatini, even the big ones, Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, Morocco, they cannot survive on their own. And it was by design. To see to it that Africa will forever be chasing its tails. And then as time goes on, after the Second World War, they were trying to figure out how to rebuild the West. So they set out financial systems. The Bretton Woods, whose sheer survival is based on the failure of developing nations, the majority, of course, being in Africa. I want to repeat that, guys. The sheer survival of the British Woods in institutions, Bretton Woods, and other financial institutions, their survival is based on the failure of developing nations, who must pay exorbitant interest rates, even nations that have never defaulted on their loans, because World Bank wants that money. IMF needs that money. So the world financial systems are set up to benefit the West. I repeat, the world financial systems are set up best to benefit the developed Western nations. And until those systems are disrupted, the continent of Africa and her children are doomed. Countries are paying upwards of 50% of their GDP on loan repayment. How can a country survive? Some countries are up to 66% of their GDPs on loan repayment. The situation gets worse with former Francophone countries. In addition to the exorbitant interest rates, they're still paying over 50% of their bank reserves, depositing them with the French treasury. Africa is under siege. Then they also realized that for the rest of the world to survive, they needed Africa to be the sole supplier of natural resources. So they created the World Trade Organization, whose sole role is to make sure that Africa will continue to be the provider of raw materials to the rest of the Western world. Have you ever wondered where are the coffee plantations in Switzerland? And yet Switzerland has Swiss coffee, Swiss chocolate, Swiss this, Swiss tea. There's not a single plantation in Switzerland. So where is the World Trade Organization? They're supposed to be the watchdog to say, hey, wait a minute, Switzerland. Where are you getting all this? Let's come see your fields. But no, theirs is to give it a blind eye, because they have an agenda. Then they came up with the League of Nations. We're all equal. We must all come together and speak with one voice as the United Nations, and we need to look out for human rights violations now. Let's all come together. And of course, for the 5-member UN Security Council, let's have China, let's have Russia, let's have the United States, let's have France, let's have Britain. 3 of those countries are some of the worst violators of human rights in the history of man. I'm talking about slavery. I'm talking about colonization. So we are coming out of what's supposed to be the end of colonization. We are creating an institution that's supposed to be the watchdog for human rights violations. And then we took those who are still hiding skeletons, proof of murder, proof of theft. They now sit on the high table to make decisions about how to end human rights violations. Hello. I'm talking about the root causes of why African tree of life is ailing. At independence in late 1950s into the early 1960s, we got our economic liberation. I apologize. We got our political liberation. And I call it limited political liberation, because the average African country does not decide who the next leader is. It's who can pay them the most, who can fund the opposition the most. But what was denied single-handedly and uniformly was economic liberation. The multinational companies that existed during colonization, they just went low. They continue to do their work to this day. They have never left. They are the majority of the employers of most Africans on the continent. 75% of the minerals being traded at the London Stock Exchange are from Africa, and none are owned by those who look like me. Multinationals that are using safe havens to avoid paying taxes. It's another pillar of what is wrong with the African tree of life. Billions are going out of Africa, not only from safe havens, but we're also having illegal trade in minerals. 747s are picking up minerals in the Congo with tarmacs in the jungle. Illegal trade in exotic plants and animals. Billions are going out of Africa. Africa is under siege. The exploitation of Africa has never stopped. Then we turn around and say, what is the leadership doing about it? Well, if the leadership is defeated where it matters the most, which is the mind, if the leadership doesn't understand that the issues of the ground are the issues that we need to address, the leadership must understand that let's not be thrown a shiny object and be told, you have bad healthcare, you got poor education, you got poor leadership, you got corruption. My children, brothers and sisters, those are issues above the root of this African tree of life. You can change leaders as often as you change clothes. But until you can control your own economy, what are you leading? Until you can control your own military, until you can control your own natural resources, who are you? Call that a leader? That is the reality in our Africa. So when I was asked to come and address the African students and we're talking about leadership in Africa, I felt very strongly that I needed to address the issue of the ailing tree of life, African tree of life. That it is crucial that you understand what is really at the root cause of why Africa is where it is today. And after you understand why Africa is where it is today, understand that the issues above the root, once the issues of the ground are addressed, it's easy to take care of the issues above the root. So don't be thrown a shiny object and be told frivolous things and run after them. I know many of you African diaspora. You don't want to go home because the leadership is corrupt. Good luck. You're not going to go back home there. You must understand Africa. And as future leaders of tomorrow, it's important that you understand the issues below the root. It is the issues below this root of this ailing African tree that need to be addressed. The world financial systems must be disrupted and new ones put up. The United Nations must understand 1.4 billion people, the largest voting bloc at the UN, has no voice at the table. African Union must be the 6th member of the UN Security Council. The World Trade Organization must stop abuse and exploitation of the continent by siphoning natural resources. Their policies too must be changed. And when it's all said and done, after we've dealt and understood the issues of the root, the final battle is the mind. That's where we were defeated the most. The fear of those who don't look like us must stop. We must understand as Africans, as black people, that we're just as good as anybody else. We're just as smart as anybody else. No one, and I mean no one, should tell us otherwise. But the question then becomes, do you believe that you're just as good as anybody else? It took a long time to get you to be of the mindset that you are today. It's going to take some time. But that means you relentlessly, constantly checking yourself, reminding yourself, because you are just as important as anybody else. You see, growing up in this beautiful country of the United States asked for the voices of the Irish Americans loud and clear. President Biden just went to see his roots. The German Americans, the Chinese Americans, the Indian Americans, their voices are loud and clear. They understand the importance of staying connected to their anchor. Ask for the voices of us black people. You might as well go to the graveyard. We're missing in action. We're taught to not like ourselves, let alone each other. We're taught not to believe in what we can do. We are not united. The rule of divide and conquer was implemented long before the children of Africa were taken out as slaves. The divisions continued. The light-skinned slave, the field slave, the house slave, even down to Uganda during the genocide. Those with straight nose, those with flat nose. Visions are deep, and they're everywhere. The question then becomes, when you look at the image in the mirror, what do you see? Do you love what you see? Do you believe in what you see can do? Or are you going to continue to be a victim of this centuries-old strategy of divide and conquer? A system designed to make you believe anything to do with you is undesirable. I don't know if some of you saw that little experiment of a young 5-year-old black boy was given dolls to look at. That doll, black one and a white one. Show me which one is ugly. The boy pointed at the black one. Show me which one is beautiful. Pointed at the white one. Show me which one is mean. Pointed at the black one. Show me which one is nice. Pointed at the white one. Show me the one that looks like you. And reluctantly pointed at the black one. 5 years old. The boy is defeated before his life even begins. Are you that boy? Are you that little girl? As I leave this podium, I'm going to ask all of you to have a serious conversation with the image in the mirror. Because it is the image in the mirror that needs to heal. The image in the mirror must understand that the image is sick not only at home. We're not sick in a doctor's waiting room. We're not sick in the wards, in the hospital. We are sick in the intensive care, and we need healing. Until we heal from the legacy of slavery and the legacy of colonization, until we understand that there is such an entity that we are suffering from, such an ailment that we are suffering from, how do we begin to heal? Let's accept the systematic brainwashing that we have been put through. And when we understand what we have been put through, it will become just a little bit easier every day to undo the damage. 20 years from now, you all might have children. The children shall come to you. Mom, Dad, there were problems with our beloved Africa. There were problems with us as a people. What did you do? What did you do? I hope your answer is not going to be, well, we sat back and we just let them continue to do what they were doing. Because they said, oh, no, there's a lot you could do. This moment is calling for unity of purpose. Just like the other nationalities in this beautiful melting pot that is the United States, we too must unite. We too must believe in what we can do if only we can just come together and speak with one voice. So yes, starting at this beautiful institution, where you are exposed with the best of the best in education and excellence. You can say to your daughter, to your son, sit down. This is what we did. We got together, my brothers and sisters. While the mission is not yet complete, while we have not yet arrived at the promised land, this is what we have done. And this is where you need to pick up and continue the struggle. The struggle for black people around the world is only going to be one. We, as a people, wake up. We have no choice but to wake up and demand the world treats us fairly, the world treats us equally, and that we demand a world that is free of racism, bigotry, and hate. That we must do. Starting with all of you, bright minds, right here at MIT. I thank you.
Her Excellency would take a few questions if we have mics here. There's one over there, there's one here, so.
Hello, I just want to make that parallel. This is what actually, of course, happened here with the Native Americans. So it is the same European conquest, and all of us have been subjected to it, but thank you.
Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. Throughout the history of post-colonial Africa, we've seen what happened to Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, Kwame Nkrumah, the coup which happened to him as well. And we've seen what happened to you after you stood for us and you said everything that needed to be said. And so how can we who are not even in those positions of political influence, national leaders, ambassadors, what are some things that we can realistically do in order to see this Africa that we all desire so much?
1 million people with $100 a month is 1.2 billion people. I mean, $1.2 billion in 1 year. Can you manage that? Is there any reason why each one of you can't commit to the betterment of us to $100 a month for 1 year? I'm using that as an example to say, we have a tendency as black people, when we want something done, we expect somebody else to fund it. You see, that spirit of saying, I can make a contribution. I believe in what is being done. And I don't care if my brother is going to run away with my $10. I am going to give that $10. Let him have to deal with his conscience. See, others do it very well. I've attended many events. The Irish, there is 2 million in like 1 hour. The Jews, they believe in pulling their resources together. That's where it begins. You see, no money, no voice. We have great ideas. But after we finish with the great ideas, we go to the ones who put us in the position of servitude and expect them to get us out of it. It's not going to happen. So first and foremost, believe in yourself. Believe in what you can do. As students right here in this institution, I don't know about MIT, but I've been to many other institutions. There were 5 black organizations. 5. 1, African Americans. 2nd, Continental Africans. 3rd, Caribbean American. 4th, Latino. And the 5th one blew my mind away. These were first generation children of continental Africans. Who the African Americans are not saying, you're not African American. And the Africans are saying, you're not African, so they created their own little organization. How stupid is that? Are you with me? That's what I'm talking about. If you all can come together in such a simple way, you want to jump up and tell the leaders 5,000 miles away, well, you all organize yourself. Why don't you start by organizing right here? And then you go to the next, you go talk to Harvard. But Harvard is going to start telling you, oh, we're better than MIT. Oh, please don't you let me go to the state colleges. No. The divisions, the issue starts with you. Organize at your level, no matter how small. Get groups of people. Incidentally, I have my book, Africa 101, The Wake Up Call. I'm donating it to the students. Fundraise. Read a chapter. All the things I've been saying, I've decided, let me put it all in the book, so it's a no-nonsense, say it like it is, whether you like it or not. If not, go to hell. Start a book club. So yes, for those who want to support the Student Association, I have signed a copy, but if you want a picture with me, it's $1,000 to the students. How about that? Think within your sphere of influence. What can you do to further our agenda? With the ultimate goal being that of unity. You have the power.
Thank you, Ambassador, so much for this inspiring speech. I mean, throughout the day, we've been talking about financing, and we've been talking about innovation. One thing I see on our continent, especially in the area of finance, and I asked that question earlier, I don't think we had a political leader like yourself to answer, but have you ever been in any of the rooms where we're speaking about currencies, and why we have all these different currencies on the continent, especially when it comes to trade? Is there anything that you see being talked about that can help? Because a lot of the innovation we are trying to do out here, some of them are technological, but to even transact, and I think one of the panelists mentioned something like from Djibouti to Dakar, which is like the length. It's easier to ship something from China to Dakar than from Djibouti. So what is going on then? And for your generation, sometimes I feel like we were failed because the leaders like Nkrumah and everybody came in, but the generation after them, we see right now, some of them don't want to move from their seats. We see democracy, elections going on. People in Nigeria fought. But I don't want to mention people's name because, but what is going back? We see our youth actually on the continent. We are here doing things and it's not moving. What else can we do? Thank you.
The issue with Africa goes back to the divisions. As we speak, with the exception of the African Union, African leaders cannot speak on behalf of other African countries. So you'll find that the systems that were put in place by the former colonial masters, those are the systems that continue to exist this very day, be it legal, be it financial. Wherein lies the problem? And all of it goes back to the mind. I must say, I begin to see a little glimmer of hope. As we see more and more African leaders, if you pay attention, are beginning to speak up. Even the African Union, through their Exim Bank, they've now implemented a payment system that when it is fully implemented and working, a woman in Malawi can sell her product in Kwacha, can sell her product to a Nigerian, and the Nigerian will pay for that product in Naira, but the Malawi woman will receive her payment in Kwacha. Exim Bank is implemented that system, is actually in the process. As we move through the pillars of development in Africa, which is what our ancestors, our forefathers, our Pan-African leaders back in 1963 wanted to do, which was the establishment of an Africa that spoke with one voice, a United States of Africa. But unfortunately, the Casablanca group, who were Ghana, Guinea, Mali, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Egypt, they lost. They were the ones that said Africa for the Africans at home and abroad, and African Union now. But the remaining other 28 nations, they said, let's go slow. They were the Monrovia group. Let's kind of wait on this unity thing. The Casablanca group wanted an Africa with one currency, an Africa with one customs union, an Africa with one monetary fund, one monetary policy, one stock exchange. They failed. We often say in 1963, when the Casablanca group lost, Africa lost. However, of those pillars of development, we have accomplished one through the African Union, which is the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area. This will see Africa going to the world as one customs union. We need a single currency. But think of trying to unite 42 currencies, I believe, because the other 14, they all use the same. Europe, when they became EU, with 27 nations, was one of the most difficult things they had to do to integrate themselves. So you can imagine, on one hand, you're trying to implement the African Continental Free Trade Area, and then you want to introduce the currency. It's going to create major chaos. Leadership understands that is needed. We have to be practical and systematic as we approach it. West Africa is coming up with an ECHO, but even at that regional level, its implementation is becoming a challenge. None of the countries have been able to meet their own parameters to say, if we are to safely integrate, every country must meet these milestones. That's at a regional level. So it's not that goodwill is not there. The goodwill is there, but it all goes back to the Berlin Conference. Those tiny little countries, all of them doing little things. And how do we integrate each other? So yes, we need a single passport. I shouldn't have to have a visa to travel throughout Africa. We need a single currency. I should be able to travel throughout Africa and trade with one currency. So between the mind and some of those African countries that think they're better than others. South Africa, you know, South Africans don't think they're Africans. I was at the airport in Johannesburg. Two Zulu boys were talking. At the airport in Johannesburg, two Zulu boys were talking, and one said, so when was the last time you were in Africa? And the other guy went like this, and said, 2 months ago. And so, you see what South Africans are doing, trying to chase other Africans out of South Africa. They forget how quickly. Nigerians, many of you are Nigerians here. You're too young to know, but you were meant to pay taxes to support the war in South Africa. You know that, right? And you, the South Africans, want to run you out of South Africa. Stupidity of the highest order, but anyway, that's a story for another day. You have some Ethiopians who don't think they're Africans, a lot of the ones in North Africa, they don't think they're Africans. So we got a whole lot of other issues that we're going to deal with. But those are housekeeping issues, and we cannot allow them to get in the way of the bigger picture. So if we need to spank somebody's butt, we do. But those are housekeeping issues.
Thank you, Ambassador Arikana. My name is Wilfred Ba. I'm from Cameroon. It's really fascinating to hear you speak about these impactful, issues, because they are pretty complex. The one that I'm fascinated about is about changing mindset. I think that's like the most complex thing we can, humanly conceive. And I think coming from the global south, our institutions are pretty weak. We have strong presidents and weak institutions. The United States has strong institutions and weak presidents. And the same institution here is built on racial hierarchy and subjugation. So every country has its own issues that they're trying to overcome. But I guess the question is, how do we build, we need to have a seat at the table to make any meaningful impact or change. So how do we build that global coalition to be able to have something like an EU, to be able to sit on some of these World Trade Center and all these organizations to be able to influence some of these changes that we want to see happen?
Well, first and foremost, I hope you meant continental rather than global. Because we need to build that continental coalition. First, we must unite as the continent. There are too many divisions. The leaders come to the United Nations not to further our own agendas, but to be bought so we can vote with other people to further their own agendas. What is needed first is for Africa to unite and to speak with one voice. The day that the African leaders begin to speak with one voice, the game is over. At the UN, we're the largest voting bloc. Why aren't we getting what we want every time? But because we're divided. And it goes back to the mind. It goes back to the mind. So it's easy to get bought. It's easy for brown envelopes to move around. But when it's all said and done, my son, the unity among Africans is a must. But there's too much interference. Former Francophone countries, if you remember the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization, they can only align themselves with France. All of them have French military in their countries and can be invaded by those militaries without notice. France feels their position is being threatened. So yes, while a leader might want to align themselves with their brothers, here comes a phone call from France. You do this, these are the consequences. The external pressures that are being placed on African leaders are unimaginable. If only African leaders could be allowed to lead without outside interference, maybe, just maybe, we could get somewhere. I don't know how many of you, after my interview with Al Jazeera during the US-Africa Summit, one of the comments I made was that African Union must be the 6th member of the UN Security Council. The following day, the same guy from Al Jazeera was interviewing President Kagame of Rwanda. And he said, yesterday I spoke to Ambassador Chihombori. She suggested that AU should be the 6th member of the UN Security Council. What do you think? And his response was, we're so glad she said it for us, because if we said it, we will be misunderstood. Are you with me? Something so simple. And some of you already know, in the past, when leaders have stood up, they've been eliminated. So, dangers are out there and they're real. They're limited in what they can say. I remember one time I got a call about a deal that was supposed to happen in one of the Francophone countries. The product was supposed to come from Ghana. So there was a Ghanaian company that was bidding, and there was a French company that was bidding. The bid from the French company was twice the bid of the Ghanaian company, and the product was coming from Ghana. So when the country was going to give the bid to a Ghanaian company, here comes a phone call. You got to give this deal to the French company. Failure to do so, there will be consequences. Because remember, the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization, which remains in effect today, says all minerals, all natural resources discovered and yet to be discovered, French companies have the first right of refusal. Where I got a phone call, which I did not do anything about, but their issue was, some smart young men, I'm sure must have been one of you, recent graduate of MIT. This is wrong, that was his position. Can we at least get somebody in the media to let's leak this information. So when it shows up on BBC or CNN, then we can then go back and say, you see, the people know now. Because if we don't give this contract to the Ghanaians, the people will rise. And that is the only way the Ghanaian company got the contract. Are you seeing how bad and how how sad the situation is. And this is the environment they work in. So the reality is, we, as the righteous inhabitants of our beloved earth, regardless of our skin color, we must stand up for what is right and what is just and what is fair, and refuse this blatant abuse of not only Africans, but abuse wherever we see it around the world.
The ambassador has a very tight schedule. We're going to take one last quick question from my colleague here, and then we're going to cut it around.
Ambassador, thank you for the depth of insight you shared with us today. I think my one question for you, in the spirit of ending on a hopeful tone, is what's that one fond memory that you keep close to your heart that gives you a lot of hope for the future of the continent?
I was born in Zimbabwe, and I was only maybe 6, 7 years old when the guerrilla warfare started. That was after Ian Smith declared unilateral independence from the British and instituted apartheid in Zimbabwe in 1965. So I am a child of the revolution. I remember in high school, we would wake up every day in boarding school. Boys were disappearing, were joining the guerrilla warfare. They gave up everything. They raised their lives, left their family members. But they knew if I went in this direction east, I shall run into a country that is sympathetic to my cause. If I go north, I shall run into a country that is sympathetic to my cause. The liberation of Zimbabwe, Namibia, Angola, Mozambique, Algeria, Mauritius, it took a few brave men and women who stood up and said enough is enough. That what was being done to us as a people was unacceptable. They didn't ask, what has he done? They didn't ask, what has she done? They said, what can I do? And that's what keeps me going. What can I do? So yes, I'm an elder now. I have a responsibility to share with all of you what I know. So you too can grow up into leadership positions with a clear mind. But more importantly, a mind that is healed. A mind that can see clearly now. A mind that can no longer be exploited. Because once liberated here, it doesn't matter where we put you. You will do the right thing. So that's my mission. Support our students. There's only 14 books. But Sandy, if you need some more, let me know.
Yes, so there is only 14 of these.
Aside.
One person, this